Hey BSP fans, this is Tim, and you're listening to episode 37 of the Black Swamp Podcast. As always, thanks for tuning in, and feel free to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you subscribe and listen on Apple Podcasts, throw us some stars and or a review, as that always helps boost our exposure and push our little podcast out to more percussion enthusiasts like yourself. A couple quick shout-outs before moving on to this episode with Michael Ptacin. Judging for the solo divisions of our 2021 Percussion Ensemble Showcase wrapped up a few weeks ago. So I'll announce some results. We had a couple solo divisions. College snare drum. First place winner was Ashton Carter from Texas A&M University in Conyers. Second place went to Andrew Simmons from the University of Delaware. In the high school snare drum solo division, first place went to Jonathan Sicard from Prosper High School. Second place, Arjun Palaniappan from Linn-Mar High School. Then we also had a multi-percussion solo division with college entries only. So first place went to Catherine Lemon from Central Michigan University, and second place, Tyler Smith at Oberlin Conservatory. So congrats to all the winners, and thanks for everybody that participated. We'll be sharing video features on our website and socials in the next few weeks, so keep an eye out for those. Also throw a link in the show notes for easy access. Michael Ptacin is a recent BSP Concert Artist, but actually someone I've known since meeting at a convention years ago. He's got his hands in all sorts of musical stuff, like musical theater, sequencing and programming, arts administration, and most recently audio-video production, largely due to the pandemic and ensembles wanting to record and produce video content to share with their supporters. This all seems to stem from his willingness and excitement to try new things, accepting challenges, and a loose professional motto to never say no within reason. So we discuss Michael's motto in connection with his various activities and how they developed, as well as a push for diversity awareness and inclusion within his projects and the percussion community as a whole. So here we go.
I'll try to keep this as natural as possible. I get really awkward in interviews, so we'll see
Well,
how it goes.
yeah, you and me both. So this could be the most awkward conversation on the podcast to date.
Yay!
Right.
I think that's going to have to stay in.
Yep,
at some
I think
point
that's
as
where
an
we'll
intro.
start. So, welcome to the podcast. Either way, Mike. It's probably not Mike. It's Michael, right?
Yeah. I went to a school with a lot of other people named Michael,
Okay.
and so we all had to very much stick to a certain thing. I
Yeah.
definitely go by Michael.
So, were you Michael P then at school, or was?
I was mostly just Michael. People do call me Michael P.
Yeah.
But I was mostly Michael. There was Michael, Mike. There was someone we called by the last name,
Yeah.
and then there was someone that we referred to as a completely different name.
Okay, wait. I don't want to know that. This is a family show.
No, it was a normal name. No, we just called him Timmy.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
Oh,
he
that's
kind of
cute.
he kind of always looked like Tiny Tim.
Yeah.
Just something about his face. So, we just had another name.
Yeah, that's funny. Nobody really calls me Timmy, except for I have my professor in undergrad, Greg Secor. I knew him when I was in junior high, and then he was my percussion instructor in high school, like all through high school. And then when I went to Grand Valley State University, which is in West Michigan here, when I joined the music program, he started teaching at the music program. So then we saw each other for like another 4 or 5 years at Grand Valley, and he's really the only person that would call me Timmy sometimes, which was endearing, I think. But so yeah, other than that, nobody calls me Timmy. My youngest daughter's name is Zoe, and she remembers this years ago when she was in preschool. There was a couple other Zoes, I think, there, so they all had to refer to themselves as like Zoe C or Zoe P or Zoe. So it still kind of frustrates her. She's like, my name's just Zoe. You don't have to call me Zoe C. So
Yeah.
So, all right, Michael, back to reality here. What I like to do is sometimes is just get a little bit of backstory from people. So I know you went to school at North Carolina, Greensboro, for doctoral work specifically, and right now you're in Dallas. Like, did you kind of grow up on the sort of southern East Coast, like in North Carolina, or how did where did you grow up, and how did you end up at Dallas, basically?
Yeah. I started in Pennsylvania. That's where I was born.
Okay.
Kind of in central Pennsylvania, about 50 miles north of Harrisburg, the capital.
Wow.
I was there until I was 12, I think. Right when you started 6th grade. I think that was 11 or 12.
Sure.
And I moved to North Carolina at that point. And I stayed there until, about August of 2015. And then I moved out here to Dallas. And I've been here since then.
So did you go to like undergrad and graduate work in North Carolina also, or?
Yes, yeah. I actually, this is the thing that there's always lots of talk about schools and what people do. I actually went to UNCG, University of North Carolina at Greensboro, for all 3 degrees, bachelor's, master's, doctorate.
Interesting.
I studied with different people at all points in time. So the main reason I stuck around, one, I really liked the people that I got to study with over the course of the degrees. But I was really kind of drawn to the area. I mean, I loved the Greensboro area. I liked the people. There were also a lot of personal life things that kind of kept me there for a while. And so while there were parts of me that did want to venture other places for school, I pretty much stayed there. But like my undergrad, I studied with TAs. So I had Pete Zambito, I think 1 year, and then Nathan Daughtry taught me for several years. And then like my senior year, I studied with the main professor, Court McLaren, and then I studied with him during my master's. And then when I went back to my doctorate, Court retired, and so I had a few different people over the course of my coursework in the DMA program that were my teachers. So, kind of varied.
Yeah, cool. I mentioned these kind of Black Swan presentations. I'm not sure if that was on or off mic that I do, and sometimes people ask me about my transition from like graduate school to working at Black Swan Percussion, and there was definitely a time there during that transition where I went to the University of Akron for graduate work, and what was I going to do? Was I going to go get my doctorate, or was I going to try to go somewhere and play? Like, what was your sort of thought process behind getting a doctorate, I guess, like kind of making that decision? Like did you kind of have an idea of where you were going or doing at that time, or you're just like, I want to keep playing, or I want to keep studying, which was my case when I got just my graduate degree?
I think for me, it was part of my original plan was I am going to be a university professor. And so to do that, I have to get a doctorate.
Right.
That was really the only overriding factor between doing a doctorate. If I didn't have that part of me that had wanted to do that, I would have stopped earlier in my education.
Okay. So then what brought you to Dallas? Or what took you to Dallas besides probably an airplane? Maybe you drove. I don't know.
No, it was a U-Haul with all of that stuff in tow, including the 2 cats, which were not a fan of the 20-hour drive.
They didn't have to ride in the back of the U-Haul, right? They were
were in the cabin. Yeah, but it was not very pleasant for them. They did not enjoy that trip. I'm surprised I didn't end up in Dallas maybe sooner in life. Like I said, there were a lot of things that kind of kept me in Greensboro.
Right.
But when I marched drum corps back in the day, I was around people, both instructors and players, who were from this area.
Oh, okay.
My teachers back then, the caption heads were Paul Rennick and Sandy Rennick.
Right.
At the time, Sandy Sherman, and so
we're talking about Carolina
lots of
Crown, by
friends,
the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, Carolina Crown. And so lots of friends, went to UNT or transferred to UNT. I had friends in North Carolina that transferred out there. And so there was always kind of that draw, like, hey, come join us. And I never really did. But yeah, I was looking for something new kind of in life. Like I said, I finished my doctorate, and then I stayed, working. I worked at a law firm for about 8 years in North Carolina, and I worked there a couple more years after I finished my doctorate.
Wait, law firm?
Yeah.
like litigating? Were you like in like order in the court type stuff, or like sort of?
No. I did not work. I did not work in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Not an attorney or anything. I was a paralegal assistant.
Oh,
Like
that's
that.
cool.
I went through a few different jobs at the law firm.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked there 8 years. So, but yeah, I started that after my master's. I took a year off before I went back for my doctorate, and so I got a full-time job as a receptionist, and then after a few months I became a case manager, and then when I wanted to go back to school, they were really cool and worked out a part-time position for me, and I stayed doing that basically for the last 6.5 years.
Did you have an interest in law prior to that, or was it like I need a summer job?
Yeah, I was looking for full-time work,
Yeah.
and a friend of mine was working in one of their offices and said, he texted me at like it was like 10 a.m. one day and was like, hey, if you're still looking for a job, they're looking for a receptionist in our Greensboro office. Can you be there in 45 minutes? Now, I was still in bed, and Greensboro, it's only a 25, 30-minute drive, so it's not that bad. But it was like I had to get out, I had to get showered and get dressed and find a resume.
Yeah, right.
and print it,
Yeah.
and then get up to the interview. And I remember, and then getting lost trying to find the office.
Right.
So that was fun. But I got that job.
Yeah, you were the first one there, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, so it kind of worked out that way. But yeah, so that's how I ended up at that. What were we talking about before that? Oh, coming to Dallas.
Yeah.
So
Well, and sorry,
So-
side note. Also, I was again. I'm working from home, and my wife is like right in the same room here. She works from home every day. She's like, "Who are you talking to today?" And I was like, "Oh, this guy Michael Ptacin." And usually my like explaining who people are to her is if they have or have not marched drum corps, because she marched. She was in Cadets Color Guard in the like mid '90s, and so
okay.
yeah. And I'm like, okay, he marched Carolina Crown in like early 2000s, so he was marimbist and percussionist there. So that's usually my in,
Yeah.
and then I try to tell her more about who I'm talking about. But like, it's all kind of hinges on drum corps. But
Yeah, I probably just missed her. I started in 98, so I
Oh, okay.
marched 98 through 02.
Yeah.
But so if she was at Cadets, then April Gilligan
Oh, yeah.
would have
Yeah.
been there,
Yeah.
her instructor. So.
Yep, she was.
Yeah.
Was I think? Well, she's not paying attention right now, but 94, 95, 96, I think, like West Side Story, and then
Oh, yeah,
there was
some good years.
like a Western show and something else in there. So
Yeah, the Aaron Copeland
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
which had a really cool front ensemble section.
okay, yeah, we have two daughters, and that one not that long ago, Nicole was playing some of that show, and I think I was playing some for our youngest daughters, and just to kind of show them what mom did when she was younger and stuff. So yeah, and played some of that Aaron Copeland show, and it was great.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So transitioning back to Dallas. So you're in Texas. So you made that move.
Yeah, it was mainly, like I said, I'd finished my doctorate. I was looking for teaching experience. I'd applied for a bunch of jobs, but when you don't actually have, real teaching experience, it's hard, even, for those beginning jobs. They were in places that I didn't necessarily want to live.
Yeah.
For personal things. I'm gay, and I didn't feel comfortable, with the location of where some of the positions were located.
Sure.
So I was like, there were some things I just wasn't applying for. But my main thing was like, I just need more actual teaching experience. And so I decided to contact my friend Mark, who was a band director, or is a band director still currently, at Duncanville High School in Duncanville. And we went to high school together. He graduated my freshman year, and we marched Crown together. He aged out in, I don't remember if it was I think it was 2001. It might have been 2000, but I think it was, I don't remember. Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, I
one of
doubt
those
he's
years.
listening. I don't know.
Yeah, not live.
Right,
but,
right.
So anyway, he had been talking about it, and I was kind of looking for something to do, and I knew that their lesson teacher was leaving, and so I was like, what's it like? He's like, well, why don't you come down and check it out? And so I flew out over a week. I came in, I think it was like in April or something, and stayed for a week, and went with him to all the classes. He was still kind of doing the percussion instructor thing at the time, and then he finally transitioned fully to just band director. And so I went to classes, met kids, hung out, went to rehearsals, stuff like that. And then we spent, a day just looking at apartments and trying to pick places if I did want to move that I could stand to live. And then, so I went home, and then a couple weeks later I made the decision, I'm going to do it. And that's kind of what brought me out. I had that connection with him, which helped, have me a position before I got here, which was, I think, the only reason I moved. If I wouldn't have had something lined up, I don't think I would have just moved to Dallas for no reason.
Right. Of all the places to go, I think I don't know. A lot of people that I talk to kind of make these moves either across the country or even out of the U.S. So I don't know. I give people a lot of credit for kind of taking that step. So one thing that I kind of connect with you specifically and playing in Dallas, and I know you do teaching you. Obviously at high school and kind of college level there, I believe, but you're also heavily involved in musical theater. And if people do go to your website, you have this awesome resource, and that's kind of a little thread about, when I was kind of researching some of what you're doing and looking at what you're doing, it seems like you like to put together content for other percussionists or other performers, and so you have an online resource of the different shows you've played, and then specifically set up picks, how you set things up. Can you just talk a little bit about how sort of your career in musical theater took shape, and and then is that sort of a goal of yours to kind of share some of that experience with other people?
Yeah, well, my first, I guess we say, foray into musical theater back in North Carolina. I definitely started there. A friend of mine was a horn player named Kate. She was teaching, and we went to school together. And she had worked some with Elon University in North Carolina, which has a huge, amazing musical theater program. Probably one of the top ones in the country. Their kids go on to be all over Broadway and tours and everything. They're great performers. And she was contracting for the pit for musicals, and they were doing, I think Sweeney Todd was the first that she contacted me about, and so I got hired to do that. They needed 2 percussionists, and so my friend Andrew and I went and played that show, and that was, I'm pretty sure that was the first show I played. And Sondheim and it's Sweeney Todd, and so there's just a bunch of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. And that was kind of okay, well, this is fun. And then I kept getting hired back there, and then another friend of mine, one of the Mikes, Mike Lassley, he started music directing, and so he was hiring his musicians, and so he hired me to play percussion for that too. And so I started doing that, and I did several shows there. But when I moved to Dallas, I'll say at first, it was crickets. Yeah. I mean, there's a huge amount of playing going on in Dallas area. There's a lot of performance opportunities, but there are also a lot of players. And there are also a lot of players that play a lot of the opportunities. So, a lot of the gigs are kind of concentrated among a few people. And so breaking into anything consistently is really hard. But luckily I'd met someone, Drew Lang, he teaches at SMU.
Oh, yeah.
And he plays just a lot of stuff in town. He's kind of like the Renaissance man of percussion freelancing. I mean, he'll play with the opera one week, and he'll be with the orchestra, and then he'll be with Dallas Winds, and then he'll be playing a musical theater thing at university. It's like he's always playing. Yeah. He lives in black, that's just his life. And so, I eventually got into playing out here, got my first opportunity, and then it just snowballed. And I was doing, until last year, I was doing, 12, 13, 14 productions, musical theater productions a year.
Yeah.
So it was, every month I basically had a show, and it was keeping me busy. But with the website, I kind of took inspiration from that idea. There's a musical theater percussion group on Facebook,
Right.
and people like to share pictures of setups and talk about things on there. One of the people involved in that, Billy Miller, and he has a website with tons of pictures and setup stuff. And it was kind of like, well, I've done, all these shows, and I always take pictures of everything, and also I just like to talk about why I chose to set up things a certain way, especially when I've done a show more than once. And so when it's like, okay, well, in this production I had to do this, but this time when I played it, my setup's completely different, and here's why.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll just put it on the website and kind of create that resource, so at least for the shows I've done, hopefully some of that information can be helpful for other people as they get a chance to maybe play a show or do something like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's pretty cool to like kind of sort of bookmark all those shows and like setups, and then think about it and maybe revise it, and I don't know, and then sharing it. I think it's a pretty cool idea. Another aspect of sort of your musical theater work, which I find interesting, and this might go back further too, is just your experience with electronics and doing more outside of playing a percussion or a drum set book or whatever. Like you're kind of helping to either set up or train like people using I don't even know. Like different different things. Different stuff.
Yeah,
okay, there was my first awkward
talking...
moment for the conversation. Probably not my first.
Yeah. I think you're thinking more of like the talk of like the main stage programming and stuff like that.
Yeah, I bet
so yeah, electronics are, for better or worse, a huge part of musical theater playing, especially,
right.
And particularly for percussionists. Keyboard players have been used to it forever. They've been, dealing with creating patches and main stage or synthesizer programming and stuff like that. They've
right.
been doing that since forever. Percussionists are probably, maybe the closest next to that in terms of having to do that. And for me, it was kind of like a combination of my love of messing with electronics and music software kind of combined with just my love for theater. And so it just kind of naturally presented itself. This kind of goes into the work I've been doing the past year. But basically a lot of the things that have happened in the past few years are because, someone has said, hey, I know you're interested in this. Can you do this? Is this something that you can do? And pretty much always my answer will be yes. And I'll figure it out if I have to.
Right.
If it's absolutely something that I don't know about, I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to just be like, yeah, sure. But if it's something I have some idea about and it's not a life or death situation, then yeah, I'm happy to try to help out. And I'm probably going to learn something along the way, which is just going to expand my knowledge base as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that kind of the main stage aspect. I love programming synthesizer books. So, I use Mallet Cat and programming for my own productions, especially when I have to combine percussion and drum set books. Like I did a run of Sister Act, and there's a lot of really nice keyboard moments and timpani stuff in the percussion book, and they only hired me for drum set. And I did get them to pay me more because I was like, well, you're going to miss all this percussion stuff. So I wasn't going to combine it just for free. Like if you were going to if you want to hire me to play drums, I'll play drums. If you want a percussionist, hire a percussionist. But since I was combining them, I was like, well, if you pay me for this and this, then I'll do it. And so, it was like programming all this keyboard stuff. And, it's like doing like chord triggers where I only have time to hit like one note over on the Mallet Cat because I'm playing something on drum set. So that means that I need to make these chords happen. So I'm going to make, 5 notes happen when I hit the C, and then I'm just going to play a scale, C, D, E, F, G, and it's going to come out with all these different chords that are in the other book. So that way I only have to focus on playing one note, and all these other things are going to happen, stuff like that. Yeah, I love programming synthesizer books. I've gotten to do that for several shows. It's fun. You know, you get to kind of experiment with sound, and you're trying to recreate things you hear in the original recordings and figure out, well, how do they do that? You know, what is it close to? How do I tweak that sound to get what they're going after and stuff like that? So it's, you know, it's another side of creativity and doing something that I just find really, really enjoying. Basically anything theater you throw at me, I'm gonna love doing.
Right.
Like, I just, yeah.
Well, so one question I have is, I mean, obviously, if you're working with an artistic director or a conductor or whoever, producer, like building like these like keyboard books and things like that, that I have no idea even what I'm talking about right now. Like, obviously, you're going to work sort of directly with them, but if you are sort of exploring some of your own creativity and listening to other recordings of what those, you know, what are the actual parts, and you're only one person, so you can only do much. Like, how much kind of freedom do you have to start building your own either sequences or patches, or, you know, you're mentioning playing, you know, using a Malacat to basically build out chords and things. Like, is it pretty much free reign, or are you like gotta talk to artistic directors or directors in advance, be like, this is what I want to do, this is how I can do it? Or is it like,
Right.
you have enough clout now in the musical theater world there that you can pretty much, you're trusted?
I think it depends on the situation. If I'm creating keyboard books, you know, piano style keyboard books for other people, it's about staying as true to the original sound as possible. If there are things that are kind of esoteric, or they aren't clearly defined, or you can't really hear it on a recording, especially sound effect type things, then yeah, I'm going to ask the music director, hey, what do you want this to be? So I can work on creating that for you. It's harder when it's a show I'm not involved in, because then I'm not there to hear what's going on and get that kind of feedback. So it really has to be kind of done ahead of time, and make them think about that. And I'm happy to tweak later. If it's a show I'm playing, like if I've created the keyboard book for the person who's playing the keyboard parts, then it's really easy to change things. If we go, you know, this string sound doesn't really work here, we're not getting the attack we need or something, then sure, I can go and edit it, you know, on the moment, and that's kind of cool. But for the most part, it's up to me to really kind of set what I want at first. With my own books, if I'm playing, you know, a percussion book, and it's being combined, then for the most part, the sounds are emulating acoustic instruments. You know, so there's not really me trying to come up with something. There's not really many moments in percussion books where you're trying to create other kinds of sounds. So for the most part, electronics are just a means to simplify something.
Right.
You know, if you don't have enough space for all the acoustic instruments, you're in an environment where maybe miking is a problem, and so going electronic is just kind of the best option for making the best sound, and stuff like that. So in those environments, like I said, it's really just, I'm trying to create acoustic sounds as realistically as possible.
Yeah. And then,
unless you're doing like the witch's rap drums from Into the Woods, and then you want it to have that nice little boom, you know, kind of sound, which some people hate, and they're like, oh, it's dated and it's so 80s, and I'm like, yeah, but it's also the best.
but it's from the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Or at least it sounds like it is. So what, like, how much time do you have to spend outside of, like, I mean, if you get hired, yeah, okay, I just opened up Pandora's box there, but like obviously you have to put time and energy and thought outside of, you know, either practicing or rehearsing for these shows. Like, that's something you have to work into your schedule also. Or maybe you negotiate with whoever's directing or producing the show.
Yeah, if it's a percussion thing, then yeah, it's just a part of being hired for the gig. And so it's, you know, a part of when I think about what I'm being asked to play, if it's going to involve electronics, how much programming and stuff. So when they tell me how much they're willing to pay me, I have to kind of do all that mental math of, okay, well, if I have to put in all this time to do this, and then I have to practice this and do all this programming for electronic stuff, you know, when you start to parse it out, people are like, oh, you make, you know, $75 for playing a show, or you make $150 for playing a show. Well, yeah. One, the show is that time is several hours. You have to drive somewhere. You play the show, you leave. If it's a setup day, you have all that time in there.
Yeah.
But there's also all of, like you said, all of the figuring out the setup beforehand, practicing through things,
Sure.
figuring out electronics and programming if possible. So sometimes it ends up being like, oh, my hourly rate is $15 an hour.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, people have this misconception when they sometimes think, oh, you just went and played and you made all this money. It's like, well,
Right.
kind of all the time. And then, you know, the fact that I've had to buy all this stuff to be able to play that gig, you know,
For sure.
it's like it all spreads out. And but yeah, there's a lot of outside time. It's honestly nice when someone hires you for a show that, one, you've played before, or it's like you're just playing drum set and you don't have to worry about anything else. And maybe there's like one or two tricky grooves you have to like practice and figure out beforehand.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everything else is straightforward. And so it's like, I get to have a breather. But when it's something new or there's a lot of really tricky things going on or you're combining books, then, you know, that time starts to just pile up and pile up.
Yeah. So how does this transition to projects you're currently working on? Like you kind of referenced that previously. Like what do you have going on now that's possibly connected?
Yeah, well, you know, it all relates to technology. I've always, you know, part of it's, you know, of when I was born. I was born in 81, so I'm going to be 40 this year. And I grew up
Congratulations.
Thanks.
You made it.
Yes, yeah. Almost, not yet,
Right.
Getting there.
Well, 40 is the
we'll see
new
what
30.
happens.
Yeah.
That's what they said, 30 is the new
I
20.
know that's what every time I sometimes talk to my wife about. I'm like, well, we're nearing 50, but 50 is the new 40. Or I told my dad, who's close to 80, I'm like, 80 is the new 70, Dad. It's fine. So, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. So, you know, I think my love of electronics and technology kind of stemmed from the fact that when I was a kid, you know, I had a PC in the home and, you know, doing dial-up bulletin board services and playing like text-based games and stuff like that.
Sure.
And, you know, the rise of AOL and You've Got Mail and, you know, Instant Messenger and all those things. And then, you know, eventually you get into, you know, Yahoo, and then there's Facebook, and then all this stuff, and everything just changes, you know, over the years. But because I was kind of immersed in that growing up and you know, technology changing being such a part of my life, I've always just really been drawn to learning about it and using it. And so that kind of helps in music. But last year, so everything collapsed, and you know, I lost all work. You know, in the middle of March, and all of a sudden I went from gainfully employed to having absolutely nothing, like so many people did, especially in music. And, you know, a few months went by, and sometime in that summer, someone contacted me that I was involved with in the musical theater world, and I had programmed, you know, keyboard books for them before and stuff like that. And she was like, hey, you know, all these virtual choir things are happening, and someone contacted us. She runs a company called, or she's co-founder or one of the co-people that run this company, Tricorda, which started as a resource to provide accompanists, you know, piano accompanists to people, and then it has kind of grown into like basically kind of like a musician contracting. Hey, I need someone to play this. Do you have someone? And that kind of thing. And so people contact them for all kinds of things. And someone asked, do you have someone that could put together this virtual choir for us that we want to record? And it was just, I think it was just, I don't know if it was a high school or a church. And she was like, you know, they like never say no. So it's like, sure, let us find someone. And so she emailed me and was just like, hey, this, you know, this is happening and these people want this. Is this something you could do? And I said, well, I've never done it, but yeah, because I was like, okay, well, all it is audio editing and video editing. And I say all that is.
Right.
And it's like, well, I already am comfortable with Logic, and, you know, which is just a digital audio workstation. And, you know, using that for recording my own kinds of things and mixing and editing and all that. And then I was like, the video side of things, I was like, well, I kind of know Final Cut. I've messed around with it a little bit. And I was like, I'll figure it out. And I looked at a bunch of, a few examples of things that were going on. And you have Eric Whitaker virtual choir, which is insanity. And then you have everyone else's virtual choir, which is just like a Brady Bunch on screen.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I can do something in between those two. Like, I can be a slightly better quality than Brady Bunch on screen.
Right.
And I'm not going to spend the months of dedicated software engineering time to create Virtual Choir 6 that had like 17,000 participants,
Yeah.
So it's like, I can do something in between those. So I said yes, and was very clear about the fact I had never actually done it.
Yeah.
And she was like, we can't find anyone who has. So, I mean, that was kind of the thing. It was
Right.
like, well, not really that many people have done it. And so it was kind of like, well, if you understand the software and think you can do it, we'll say yes. And I said, okay. Because money,
Yeah.
it was like, after a time of not working and unemployment being a disaster, shall we say,
Sure.
to navigate as a self-employed individual here in Texas also compounded that. And so, yeah, it was like, yes, I need a paycheck. So I did it, and it turned out pretty well. And I learned a heck of a lot those first couple of projects. And now I'm finishing up. I'm like slam booked through the end of this month because every school in the world is doing their spring concert right now.
Right.
I personally, by the time we're done, or I'm done on May 28th, I will have completed about 80 some projects of my own.
Yeah.
And, those projects vary from, 15, 20 people to 180 people.
Wow.
There's lots of different levels. I estimated I've edited a few thousand videos and audio tracks over the course of the last, not quite year. I think I started in June last year, so it hasn't been quite a year. And then I also supervise 3 other people that make videos as well. So, I have to review all of their stuff and make sure that it's kind of meeting my standard.
Yeah.
Because somehow I became the person.
Right.
And so,
You've built a little company. You've built a company.
Yeah, it's a company within a company.
Yeah.
Because basically, they hired me, and then it was like, hey, I'm too busy.
Yeah.
We need to have someone else, or you're going to have to say no, because I physically don't have time to keep doing it. And they were like, well, we're not going to say no, so we'll find someone else.
Right.
And so at that point, a few months had gone by. So some other people had started to kind of do the virtual choir thing at varying levels. And so they found someone else and brought them in. And then that became 2 other people. And so, yeah, like I said, I review their stuff and make sure it's kind of meeting music standards, like the stuff that I'm hearing is okay. And then just, providing basically tech support for them. They don't know how to make something happen in Final Cut, or they're having trouble figuring something out in Logic, whatever. I'm there to help kind of fix their issues. So, yeah.
No, that's super cool. And I love the never say no kind of mentality. Like, yeah, you have enough knowledge to get the project off the ground, but knowing it's not going to be, knowing that you're going to have time to progress. Like, it's not the finished project is going to be, better than a Brady Bunch, but not, what else is kind of top of the line out there, but it's going to progress every time. And we at Black Swamp try to have that same mentality, I guess, going forward. I mean, years ago when we just started doing shop videos, basically Jamel and I, we had a flip cam, and we weren't recording really audio, and that wasn't extra audio, and we were just setting it up on a tripod or moving around and doing stuff. And then, oh my gosh, we got iPhones, and so now we can we can have maybe multiple camera angles or something, and then, hey, let's buy a high def camera and some mics, and now we've just kind of keep growing and building. And Nathan, who works for us here, is just heavily involved in the video production and editing and stuff. And then our audio production has increased. So with all that kind of idea that every time, it's going to get better. It's going to improve, and kind of our production value and quality is going to improve. So I don't know. I kind of appreciate that thought process. And what I also like is kind of when I talk to people on the podcast about, their careers and how they've built it, like I just see that as a thread through your career, that kind of being willing to diversify yourself, whether it's musical theater or electronics or education. I know this was a long time ago, but it was on your website, so I'm going to reference it. Like you were heavily involved in the Zeltzman Marimba Festival with like marketing and administration. Like you kind of have all these little kind of planets orbiting each other and building a career. Like, do you sort of see it that way? Like, I mean, maybe not intentionally using all these interests and efforts to build a career, or has it kind of just happened like that?
I think it's just kind of happened like that. I'll talk more about that, but I will say about the just saying yes. There is a time to say no, and I do want to make that clear. Because if what you're gonna do isn't, if you're not comfortable, or it's going to possibly have a negative impact if you don't do something up to a certain standard, like don't say yes. There are times to go for something, and there are times to be like, is this possibly gonna damage me more if I turn it, if I do it and don't do a good job versus if I just say no. So granted, my philosophy is to try to just say yes to as much as I can. If I have very well said no to some things where I've been like, that's not going to be good for me, and because I can't guarantee that you're going to get the best possible thing, and this person's going to be better for it, and so I'm going to recommend them to you. Which also honestly has worked out in my favor, because people know if I recommend someone, I'm recommending someone better than me. I'm recommending someone that I look up to. Like if I get a sub for a rehearsal or a show, like I mentioned Drew Lang earlier, he's probably the first person that I try to get. He's better than me, and he's higher up the hierarchy in the gig scheme. And so it's like, if I'm going to get a replacement, I want to make sure that they're going to be solid, and they don't know, the conductor doesn't have to worry about anything. So that's kind of my thing. But yeah, if it's going to negatively affect you, then definitely don't say yes. But otherwise, what do you have to lose?
So it's just say yes within reason, with a caveat.
Asterisk, asterisk, see below. Terms and conditions may apply. And so this all these different things in my career. I never really thought about it. That all these things are kind of out there. I don't know what career they're building towards. I mean, like I said, I teach and I play and I do these things. Am I always happy? No. Do I sometimes want to be doing other things? Yes. Do I know what those other things are? Maybe. It's kind of like, it goes back to, why I did a DMA. I wanted to teach college. I'm currently teaching at a community college, which is, admittedly a very different environment than having like a normal private studio for most places. Most, community colleges, it's the structure of the degree is different. So it's not like teaching at a 4-year school. And, there are things that I've learned just being an adjunct that it's like, okay, well, do I want to deal with this? If I did take a bigger job, but there would be other things about a bigger job that would make me not have this So, there's always pros and cons to everything. But yeah, I never really thought about how they all related together. I just was happy to kind of do the things, with the Zeltzman Marimba Festival and Nancy Zeltzman. That all started because I attended the festival. I went in 2007 as a participant and had a really good time. Amazing experience with some wonderful people and teachers, and meeting some awesome people. It was in Appleton, Wisconsin, which was a really cool little town. Loved it. And then I didn't go in 2008. It was in LA, and I just couldn't afford to go out for another year. And then in 2009, it was back at Appleton, and Nancy contacted me. I think after the 2007, she asked me to write a review for not percussive notes, but whatever the news, like the little flyer.
Oh, sure.
Other month thing
Yeah.
was. I think it's percussive news.
Yeah.
It was at the time.
At the time, right?
And so she was like, "Can you write a review of the festival?" And I was like, "Sure." And I think she asked me because I was one of the older people. You know, a lot of the people that were going were in their undergrads and skewing younger. And, you know, in 2007, I just finished my master's. And so I think that was why she asked me, is because she knew I was older. And I was like, sure. And I wrote it and it went really well. And then in 2009, that was the launch of the ZMF Intermediate Masterworks thing, where they commissioned 12 composers, and then they had a huge composition contest to select 12 other composers for these 24 supposed to be intermediate level pieces. Most of them are not intermediate. They're very challenging. But in 2009, it was this huge thing, and all of the faculty members were the people that played. They each had like 3 pieces that they had to premiere. So there was a large faculty. There was 8, plus all the guest artists. There were huge concerts. There was the release of the book. The first volume of the book was being published. And so she needed someone to manage the concerts. And so she said, "Hey, would you be the concert manager?" Which, you know, is just handling the people doing the ticket sales and selling of the book and CDs and handling any artist merchandise and all that kind of stuff. And I had, again, I guess I'm building on experience, I guess, in the early 2000s. I worked a few summers at a water park in the vault room. And so I handled money constantly. And the first year I was like a teller, and then the 2 years I was a shift manager. So I was in charge of physically accounting for all the money that went through the park in a day.
Wow.
And so, you know, there was that kind of going on. And I think she was like, you know, well, you've had that accounting, you know, kind of money experience.
Right.
And I was like, okay, sure. So I did it, and it went really well. Like, all the money was accounted for every time. You know, there was nothing stolen. Everything went smoothly.
Well,
all that kind of stuff.
Either means you're really good at your job, or you're a really great super criminal.
No. Yeah.
No.
Anyway,
Yeah.
No, really good at the job.
Okay.
And so that went, and then I don't remember. I think I don't think I wrote anything that year. And then 2010, it was in Amsterdam, and she was like, "I really want you to come." And I was like, "Okay." So I went, and then I wrote the review for that year. And then after that, she was kind of like, you know, we want to kind of expand the person that's been doing all of the email and all that. It's just too much. And so we want to kind of make that a separate position. You know, would you be interested in doing that? And again, it was one of those, I don't really have the experience doing it. I mean, I'm happy to figure it out and learn. You know, you trust working with me. Yeah. So there's that. And, you know, they used Constant Contact for emails, and everything was always these custom things. And I was like, well, I don't really know HTML, but I mean, you can look stuff up. Yeah. And so, you know, I started doing that, and, you know, creating the email lists and the emails that were going out. And then it became, okay, now we need to have postcards and flyers and posters and print ads for different locations and online ads. And so, you know, it just kind of spawned into that. And so I was like, well, I kind of know Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator. And so I made everything in Illustrator and was always doing that for everything. It would have been better if I knew InDesign. Yeah. But, work with what you know, make it happen. And so, yeah, that kind of blew up and became a thing up until the festival dissolved, which was last year. Or I think, it was sometime in 2020 that it officially dissolved. And so, you know, for about 10 years, you know, I was doing all the marketing and emails and running the Facebook and all that stuff, which I still run kind of as an alumni hub. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, for everything you're just describing, you might as well be working for Black Swan Percussion right now, because we pretty much, I mean, I've probably said this 100 times on the podcast. We're a group of percussionists that happen to run a percussion instrument company, and we do have you know, we have a CFO and we have a bookkeeper, so they know what they're doing on that end, and we've learned a lot over, you know, the years about, you know, running a business and running a company. But I mean, I build marketing materials, and we figured out, how social media works. And fortunately, like Eric's the president and founder, his brother's a graphic designer, and he designed the initial logo and helped out with, all the kind of marketing materials early on. My wife is a graphic designer, so I would employ her to do, kind of take some of that over as I grew and kind of developed more like artist relations and marketing programs and became more involved in that. And then, I know, I was creating stuff in Photoshop, and my wife, Nicole, she'd be like, "Oh dear, no, here's InDesign, and here, mess around with this." And so, I know enough just to be dangerous to be able to create things, and then I can, bounce stuff off of her. I'll email stuff to her and be like, "Hey, what do you think of this and that?" And then she'll give me her honest opinion, and I typically ignore it and do whatever I want. But at least, oh, you're back. Hey, your video was off forever.
Sorry, I just realized it was off.
No, that's okay.
I wasn't.
No, it's okay. I figured maybe you were. I don't know what you're doing. You prefer to not be on camera, but that's fine.
it goes on and off, and I just it happens during lessons, and I just didn't even realize. I was like, oh, I don't see myself when I'm done.
Right. No, it's cool. So you could totally. It's like the story of our life at Black Swan Percussion is figuring out how to do things, because we don't have marketing degrees, we don't have business degrees, and that's what I think is really cool about the career you've developed, but also a lot of our artists and educators have developed. They sort of learn how to do things, and then they take that experience and apply it to other aspects of their performing or education life, and it kind of grows and builds from there. So I just see a lot of what when I was making notes earlier, before we spoke, a lot of versatility and then diversity in your career. And I was talking to Donnie Johns, who's an educator in DC. He was on the podcast a couple months ago or whatever. And he contributed a video about building a career in music or percussion or really anything. And that is sort of at the core of some of that, just being diverse and being likable and being a good guy and being honest. When you're talking about referring Drew Lang, or being able to admit some of your limitations, if you're, I guess, if you need a sub, hiring somebody that and that's reliable, but never say no with an asterisk sort of thing. Knowing what your limitations are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that alone I think gives people a sense of trust and willingness to even work with you in the future possibly. So so congratulations on putting all this together.
Thanks. Well, it's we don't really have much of a choice.
Sure.
When it comes down to it, especially musicians and the gig economy, which is literally gigging for us, and you have to be able to do all these different things because you don't have someone doing it for you, especially starting out. So knowing how to deal with social media or marketing, promotion, dealing with even just basic audio and video editing. These are the kinds of things that schools didn't teach, at least when I was in school, and absolutely should be. How to do taxes. It's we didn't talk about all that kind of stuff. And I know that there are programs that are starting to do that more, but it's academia is way behind in general everything. So, a lot of it is, just trying to figure it out on your own. And some people do it better than others, but we're always trying to be better at it.
No, our oldest is going into her freshman year, so 9th grade, and we were helping her look, I don't remember having to do this when I was in high school, but she's got to basically look at all 4 years of what she wants to do, and and start thinking through what her course schedule might be. And we were just looking at the course listings, and there's things they offer now in high school that weren't even part of my thought process. Web building, web development, and sort of marketing. There was an entrepreneurial class, I think, that was offered to her. So, I agree. I think there are basic life skills like how to do your taxes, I think is a great idea, and how to sort of work with utilities and buying a home, all these adulting type things that are still a struggle sometimes that we wish yeah, was kind of part of the curriculum. I don't know, maybe it is more than I give it credit, but seems like you agree that it's a little lacking. But
Yeah, at least mine. And at this point, my experience with higher education ended, what, 8 years ago. So
mine was much longer way than that. But another cool thing I wanted to throw out there is, again, just another interest in sort of sort of your diverse interests is woodworking. And I know you experiment with like building your own instruments or repair. Like, how did that take shape and develop?
Yeah. It honestly, so when I moved here, I found this big maker space.
Oh, okay.
And honestly, the reason I joined was because I want to make a set of log drums, and I couldn't afford.
We make log drums.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't afford them at the time,
Right.
and so I was like, man, I really want a set of log drums, and I was like, they would just be fun to make, you know. And so, I joined the space, and, you have to take a woodshop basics class, no matter who you are, because you have to pass off, because they have to make sure, it's all volunteer run, makerspace things. You have to make sure you're not going to hurt yourself, as much as possible.
Right.
And so there were months backlogged on classes. And so in the meantime, they were like, well, you could take the lathe class. It's separate. And I was like, okay, that'll give me something to do. So I took the lathe class and learned how to use it and started making like bowls and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that's really cool. And then when I eventually got to take the woodshop class and then start making things, it just kind of sprang from that. I made a couple random things, and then it became, as I eventually kind of immersed into the scene, which really started with me playing with Dallas Winds, which was, again, thanks to Drew Lang kind of getting me pulled in there as a sub. And, so I eventually learned people, and then there was, hey, I heard that you do woodworking. I have this thing. Can you fix it? And so it'd be like, okay, sure, I'll figure it out. And so it kind of stemmed from that. Yeah. I've had some odd, like someone was just like, man, it'd be really cool if you made like a boing box, which is like this old, timey cartoon, sound effect. And so I was like, okay. So I went and found like old pictures of them and what they were, and was like, all right. So I made that, and I've repaired instruments, cut down shells and put new bearing edges on, and stuff like that, which I'm not a huge fan of. That frightens me, mostly because I don't have dedicated equipment for it, and I'm like, I don't want to screw up drums. So I've only done that for kind of like low stress, again, knowing when to say no. I've only done it for an environment where, if the end result hasn't been perfection, it's not going to be, I'm not, doing something to the detriment of someone. So I've had a lot of interesting things. Oh, the last year, I did all the instruments. So for Lou Harrison's organ concerto.
Yeah, cool.
Which is written for percussions and organ. And there are all these specialty instruments in it. And so the director of the percussion ensemble at SMU, John Lee, was like, hey, would you make all this stuff? So it was making these box drums, which are essentially just a box with a top and no bottom, of different sizes that you strike, making these clackers, and making this bell tree kind of thing with all these Indian bells. Has a giant box rasp that I made for it. These little bars that have felt and foam that you use to press down an octave or 2 octaves on piano and organ and stuff like that. I've made conductor's podium for a church and things like that. So yeah, it's anything kind of woodworking and music adjacent.
Yeah.
People reach out to me about doing. I've had less and less time for it, and so I haven't really been doing much of anything lately with it. But it's a nice little thing to get to do every now and then.
Yeah. So you'd have to go to one of those co-op spaces then to work? Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest in the country. Well, it was. It's still existing, but over the last year, we went from 2,200 members to 1,200.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say 12.
No.
1,200.
Well, they're only, and that's the thing is they're only I think if they go under 1,000 members, it can't sustain itself because of the the lease of the space. We have massive warehouse space.
Yeah.
And just utilities and stuff like that. So, if it goes under like 1,000, it goes away.
Oh, wow.
And so they're really kind of hoping it turns around for that soon. But there were lots of other things besides the pandemic that some people there are kind of blah, because you're dealing with lots of people. See, my video went off.
Yeah.
So I have to go there. So again, some people say, hey, would you do this? And if it's a really simple project that I can't charge much for, it's like, okay, well, it takes me 30 minutes to get there and 30 minutes to come back. And how many trips am I going to have to make? Because, so it's like, if it's a really easy thing, sometimes it's like, well, that's not really worth it in the end, because I can't charge you enough to justify all the time. So I'll have to pass, unless like we're really good friends and and I'm just trying to help you out.
No, what you're doing is it's called cost benefit analysis, Michael.
Yes, yeah.
That's what we've learned to do at work. Again, our CFO kind of like clued us in onto like, okay, yeah, you have this great idea, but how much is it going to cost to make? How much is it going to cost to develop? How many of these are we probably going to sell? Are they going to be tens or are they going to be, thousands a year? So that's definitely something that we consider while we're developing product and manufacturing. So I don't know. It's pretty cool that you have that insight. And again, I think that goes back to like being an entrepreneur, like having that sort of sensibility and thinking through it, like what's worth your time and what's not, because this is your job, your career, and you want to, time is money. Obviously, I know it's a cliche, but it's the truth. Like that's what we talk about a lot at work. Like sometimes, like you're saying, it's not really worth you to do it. Like sometimes, it's not even worth us to start a project or something because of what the sort of cost benefit is. But and that's I think I've mentioned it too on the podcast before, like that's sometimes why we do limited edition things, or we'll do limited run stuff, because we do, we're creative and we like to sort of showcase those talents and creativities, but we know that maybe we're not going to sell thousands of these whatever, and we're not going to put it on the price list or in the catalog, but we'll do 50 or 100 or whatever, and kind of whet our appetite and then kind of get something new and interesting out into the world. So cool. I mean, we're kind of coming up to an hour here, so I don't know. I think you got a lot of great stuff going on, and I appreciate you sharing it all with me and with the listeners. Sometimes I do like to ask, like, where are you getting your inspiration from, like continued inspiration, continued development? Sometimes I kind of wrap up with this question: are there things you're reading, listening to, watching that kind of lead to your like progress as a musician or percussionist or just an individual? Like, is there anything you want to share there?
I think a test of this last year especially, but it extended beyond that for me, was kind of like finding new ways to be passionate about, what I'm doing. I've done like a lot of co-commission consortium type things in the past. And then I never play the music, even though I like it. So like I just started, or just commissioned, 3 officially, 1 is still being worked out, composers to write pieces specifically for me. And, a part of that was I chose composers who could reflect on like the gay experience and queer culture and stuff like that. And so like Steph Davis, who's at Boston Conservatory, they're writing a marimba solo for me. Che Buford, who's a violin player, he's writing, or he wrote a vibe piece for me. And then Dave Molk, who is definitely, heterosexual white man, but I like him a lot and respect what he's doing and love all the electronic stuff he's doing, which dance music, I went to a lot of raves and like gay clubs when I was younger and stuff like that. And so I was like, hey, I have this idea, and he's been doing a lot with Ableton and DJ type stuff, and I was like, I really want you to write a piece for desk bells and electronics, and I want it to be kind of like dancey and reflective of this. And so he wrote me a really fun piece, which I've put a clip of on Instagram, and I'm hoping to finally get all recorded this summer. And so besides that, it's for me, I mean, I've binged everything this last year, just because I haven't had the desire to do a lot of things. And so I'm at home. But I think what I derive most inspiration from right now is just other people. Like, you know, I've gotten to meet virtually a lot of really great people these last couple years, and last year in particular, and people that I respect and are doing lots of really cool things. Like I said, you know, for me, you know, the representation of having, you know, outwardly gay percussionists, you know, percussion especially is a very like heterosexual male driven field.
Yeah.
And so having these other kinds of things, you know, you've had like Emily de la Mater talk about it, and like Melanie talked about it, and Colin Bernstein talked about it. You know, it's just all these like people you've had on lately that have kind of talked about,
sure,
you know, these different aspects of, you know, intersectionality and queer communities and you know, racism and misogyny, all this kind of stuff going on.
Right.
And so I've just surrounded myself with a bunch of people that I think are doing really great things and being themselves and being, you know, out there and doing stuff. You know, Spectrum Ensemble, Stephen Hall and Jamie Esposito. Jamie,
right,
they live in Denton, close by. Stephen's in California.
Oh, okay.
But they, you know, are a great duo that do a lot of really cool things, and, you know, specifically for the queer community and stuff like that. So, you know, Matt Lau, who was on here recently, and stuff like that, you know, BSP guy. And so, yeah, there's just, I think that is where I'm drawing a lot of my inspiration lately. It's just that I want to do more as much as I can. I didn't have role models for being, you know, gay in the percussion field. You know, when I came out in high school, I was the only person at my high school that was out.
Yeah.
And so it was, you know, kind of that, you know, I think that's where I've been driving from lately is that idea to have something else and trying to be something for other people as much as I possibly can, even though I don't feel like I ever, like, I don't know. It's, you know, when you've asked me about all these different things I've done, it's like, oh, okay, yeah. I just, we never think about, it's really hard to think about ourselves in some of those ways and to really look at what we're doing and like appreciate ourselves for what we've done.
Yeah.
And so it's just, it becomes like embarrassing and you're like, oh, whatever. But you know, I've definitely been trying to be more, you know, I use hashtag gay drummer on all my Instagram stuff for all the posts. And I just, you know, trying to put stuff out there and make sure that I'm at least being a representation as much as I can for something and for other people.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And it like I said, we're both, my wife and I are working from home today. And so on those days, we try to have lunch together. You know, sometimes even our home schedules don't work out as far as like meetings and conversations and work and stuff. And we were kind of talking about that today at lunch, just sort of giving ourselves credit sometimes for like the work that we are doing and recognizing that and sort of celebrating that. And then also like my role at Black Swamp, like how I'm using that to help call attention to queer percussionists or diversity in percussion, or and like you mentioned intersectionality. When I talked to Colleen Bernstein about that, like, you know, what it means for me to be a white male straight Christian middle-aged guy, you know, like, and what am I going to do to kind of help propel the conversation, and people that I've talked to inside of the percussion community and even outside, like unrelated to music, like kind of starting with the circles, the people that I know, and the sort of the sphere of influence there, and moving outward. So I mean, we're proud to like support you and your efforts, and happy to work with you, and to be able to kind of contribute in that sense. So I appreciate everything you're doing, and make sure you give yourself credit for all that work, you know, because I think it's important. So yeah, congratulations on it. But
thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, I reached the end of my note list. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about or throw in there or plug?
I don't. No, I don't think so. Like I said, I'm working on these commission projects that I'm super excited about. I have the completed one from Dave Molk, and so I'm hoping to record that in the next little bit.
Yeah.
I have the one from Che for vibraphone. Steph is they're getting me the marimba piece soon. They've been working on their master their marimba recital, which is coming up in a couple days. And then the fourth one, which is not totally confirmed, but I'm super excited about, which is Alex Temple. And I think she's going to do something really fun. And like, I really liked the new Works project, just had those miniatures. And I really liked, there's a piece in there by Yaz Lancaster, I can't. It's called As a Treat.
Okay.
And so I contacted Yes. So it's like, I'm just curious, like, because I posted a clip of it on online too, and I was like, I'm just curious about the title, and they told me like where it came from, and I just thought it was hysterical because it's based on a cat meme, which I was like, perfect, because I am a crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
So if you do follow me on Instagram, you see me talking about musical theater, vegan food, and about my cats. Yeah. That's pretty much it. And so it's like you get those three things from me. And so yeah, I've been doing some stuff with that piece. So I don't know. I think it'd be cool to work on the next couple months and get out there. So hopefully there will be more stuff of me actually playing more recently. I definitely do a lot of, like I said, the teaching and the performing, but I don't put out a lot of stuff of me playing because my playing is usually in a theater, in a pit. I can't really put that out there. So, trying to do more of the solo stuff. Yeah.
And another thing that I knew you were active in, and it's cool to hear about your upcoming efforts, is commissioning. And I didn't take the time to kind of dig into that, but it's cool. It's cool to know like that's like in the future for you, like even like an ongoing project of like, bringing awareness and diversity to your playing and to your collaborations and stuff. So I'm looking forward to like seeing and hearing more about that too as we move forward.
Me too.
Yeah.
Trying to, because it's really just trying to reinvigorate myself and make myself like playing in that aspect again.
Right.
I think I fell away from that a lot. So finding things that I actually care about to perform and people that I want to hear from with their music, I think that's where it's finally head for me, rather than I guess I'll just join this thing and the composer's cool and all, but now I care more about these other things that are going to reflect more about who I am and stuff like that.
This has been a BSP production, recorded and produced out of the Black Swamp Percussion facilities in Zeeland, Michigan. Audio and production assistance by Nathan Coles. Intro and outro music by Adam Hopper. Music sprinkled throughout the episode featured works and performances by musicians and composers promoting LGBTQ+ music in the percussion world. This includes Alex Temple, Dave Molk, Michael Ptacin, the Spectrum Ensemble, and Steph Davis. Full links available in the show notes for this episode. Thanks for listening.